Elders are living ancestors. They are our direct connection to the African spirit and way. And we distinguish between elders and those who are simply older, whose menticide has driven some of us into a treasonous arrogance. Those who are truly elders are our seasoned visionaries. They are our proven warrior servant workers. They are those who uncompromisingly speak to what needs to be done, and this is a life of revolutionary sovereignty seeking experience. They hold our vision closer to their hearts because they are us on the horizon of return.
Put your lighters up high, wave around side by side. We gon' light up the sky where the ancestors ride. For the nights that we cry, but tonight we take pride, cause the spirit never dies. So through us, they alive. Put your lighters up high, wave around side by side. We gon' light up the sky where the ancestors ride. For the nights that we cry, but tonight we take pride, cause the spirit never dies. We gon' celebrate their lives. Yo, I wonder if we seen the elders rise from the grave and they seen us today. What would they say? Envision as you see my words glide from the page. I imagine they would be so ashamed of our ways. We in the same position, maybe because we ain't listen. Do we lack the discipline for the tunes they was spitting? Or maybe this was karma because we ain't show them honor. Word to Dr. Ben, we should have held them down stronger. Call it how I see it, maybe that was signs from Jesus. A metaphor on how we gon' treat our own leaders. They came here to teach us and we cheered from the bleachers. And when it's time to ride, we turn our backs when they need us. We pour libations, but we form our own nation. I pray we wake up and see the time we was wasting. We even seen Elijah lay the blueprint for black power. Peace to the scholars like Dr. Wilson and Tony Brown. Light us up high, wave around side by side. We gon' light up the sky where the ancestors ride. For the nights that we cry, but tonight we take pride, cause the spirit never dies. So through us, they alive. Put the lighters up high, wave around side by side. We gon' light up the sky where the ancestors ride. For the nights that we cry, but tonight we take pride, cause the spirit never dies. We gon' celebrate their lives. If you can hear this, throw your fist in the air. We gon' do this for our family that's here. Yo, this is the hour of celebration for black power. To all the soldiers and scholars, giving their flowers. The front liners like Jabari and the soul vibers. They rep Tubman City, they set the bar higher. And them brothers like KT, the arts degree, they gon' carry on the legacy of Dr. Savior. Peace to Risen Islam and Brother Ben. Youth like them, we can end our own suffering. Break the curse of Willie Lynch with Charles S. Finch. Professor Small, take it back to the essence. I pay homage to Carlos Muhammad and Dr. Maya, torchbearers that kept it on. It's the lightest up high, wave around side by side. We gon' light up the sky where the ancestors ride. For the nights that we cry, but tonight we take pride, cause the spirit never dies. So through us, they alive. Put the lighters up high, wave around side by side. We gon' light up the sky where the ancestors ride. For the nights that we cry, but tonight we take pride, cause the spirit never dies. We gon' celebrate their lives. My energy and my thoughts is like John Clark. Still on this marathon like Farrakhan. I got an army of riders taught by Elijah. It's time we start this evolution. Patricia Newton.
Peace and love to the fam. Peace and love to the fam and to everyone who's watching now and who's watching in the archives. You see it today. We're going to be celebrating the life and legacy of our great ancestor, Dr. Martin Luther King. What up, my audience family? I see Farouk is in the building. Salam. He says peace. The queen mother, a beautiful mind, is in the building. She says peace and love, family. Let me see who else we got up in the building. Miss Tiffany, the greatest moderator on YouTube, is in the building. Miss Tiffany, thank you so much, Queen, for being here with me tonight. I see who's that? 90 by Femi is in the building. The BB Fahodier to you, warrior. Peace and love to you, warrior. Appreciate you all being in the building. I see Virgo Venom, the queen mother. Virgo Venom is in the building. She says, Black Power family. I have been waiting on this one. Peace and love to you. So, family, right now, please take a moment out to thumb up the video. Thumb up the video. Okay. Show a sister some love. Thumb up the video. You know how the YouTube algorithm works. The more you engage with the video, the more it shows up in feeds. Okay. So let's help a sister out. Thumb up the daggone video, family. Thumb it up, thumb it up. And also share this broadcast. Let's get the views out. A lot of us were off today for Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday was actually yesterday. It was on January the 15th, but we celebrated, I believe, on what is it, the second Monday or the third Monday? Let me look at my calendar. Let me look at the calendar. Yep, this is the third Monday of January. But his birthday was actually yesterday, family. It was actually yesterday. But today was, a holiday, the federal holiday for Dr. King. And so many of us were off. A lot of the federal institutions were closed. Federal government was closed. So I don't know what you all are doing, but let's send the word out that I'm live. So if you're on Twitter, tweet the link. If you're on Facebook, post the link. If you're on Facebook, post the link. If you're on Twitter, tweet the link. Okay, tweet the link. And whatever social media platform you're on, family, just help me get the word out that I'm live. Let's get the views up. And let's share this information. Sharing is caring. All right. Peace to Goddess Yemiya. She's in the building. She said, peace and black power, Dr. Maat, and to the family. Peace and black power to you, Queen. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for tuning in. She said she already liked it and shared it, and I appreciate that. Adube Asante Sana, Queen, for doing that. All right, family. So today we're going to be talking about the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. Man, let me tell you what my opinion is of Dr. King. Dr. King is one of the most underrated, in my opinion, underrated Black revolutionaries. Black intellects. When we talk about Black intellectuals and Black revolutionary, people don't mention Dr. King. A lot of us have written him off, and I don't want to quantify it. I'll just say enough of us we've written him off as integrationist. He was just trying to get us to get along with the dominant society and to assimilate and to integrate. And we kind of just dismiss him, right? But those are the people who haven't truly studied Dr. Martin Luther King. When I say that this man was ahead of his time, oh my goodness, or heaven sent, or God sent, or sent from the ancestors, sent from Oludumare, Obatala, right? I'm telling you, when I think of him, he was sent. He was special. It's no denying that. And when I read his writings when he was in Morehouse College, I say University, Morehouse College. Dr. King, when you read those writings, you would think that this was somebody in their 30s or 40s or a professor of some sort writing this stuff. Read his writings when he was in Morehouse College. He was ahead of his time when he talked about the true goal of education. He was in Morehouse at that time when he said the true goal of education is the cultivation of intelligence plus character. He was a teenager. He was in Morehouse College. Remember, he went to college when he was 15, family. That man was brilliant. He was brilliant. He was a scholar. He was an intellect. He made a lot of sacrifices for our people. We sit back in the 21st century. I wouldn't have did that. I wouldn't have did that. I wouldn't have went through all that. Do you understand? He was strategic and he was an organizer. Hell, we had the damn internet and can't get as organized as they were without it. Hello? We have the internet. We have social media. We should be able to galvanize people around the world. We couldn't even get folks we couldn't even get folks on board with, remember the boycotts that failed? We boycotting NFL, failed. We're boycotting Starbucks, failed. We're boycotting H&M. Remember that? H&M, failed. Boycotting Gucci, failed. He was a masterful organizer. He was a masterful organizer. He organized black folks without social media, without the internet. Look at the Montgomery bus boycott, for example. And shout out to Brother Knowledge Born. I'm bringing you in. Peace and love, Brother Knowledge Born. How are you, warrior?
Peace, peace, African warrior, Dr. Oya Ma'at. Look, I got dressed up for the occasion.
I appreciate it, bro.
You know,
Appreciate it.
1968,
Uh,
1968 was a pivotal year. You see what I'm
Come on.
saying? So with
Absolutely.
the
It's a
assassination
nation. Hmm.
of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., April 4th, 1968, it set a shockwave. It's a long standing shockwave that have went through. But I'll get into that in a second. I just wanted to highlight, you know, John Carlos and Tommy Smith. You see what I'm saying? And
Absolutely.
because we come from folks that risked it all. You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of people that have a lot of speculation around Dr. King's life, and they ain't risked anything. You
Come
understand what I'm
on.
saying? They
Come
didn't
on.
risk
Didn't risk
anything.
nothing.
They didn't put anything on the line. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. You see what I'm
Come
saying?
on.
So there's a lot of things that are there, and what Dr. King's assassination meant to America, especially to the inner city where we're from. Many of the places where we grew up and lived was a result. The dilapidation that took place and the neglect was a result of what happened to Dr. King, April 4th, 1968. So
No, no, absolutely, brother. But I was building on the Montgomery bus boycott, and saying
yes,
that was one of the most successful boycotts in our history. I'm talking about in Black history, where we
right.
were organized and for over, I think it was over 365 days. I want to say it was 381 days, where they refused to ride the bus and forced them to say, all right, well, let's go ahead, let's go on here. Now, let me tell you what I would have liked, and this is just hindsight 2020. I would have liked if we would have stopped riding their buses and pulled our resource together to establish our own bus companies and started utilizing our own transportation systems. That's what I would have liked, right? But again, this is me in the 21st century, right? Like, not in that culture, not brought up during that time. Okay. But the point that I'm trying to stress is that they were organized. He was able to bring about change because they were organized. They had different committees and different councils, and they were traveling from city to city, talking to people and galvanizing people and organizing people. When I listen to his speeches, he's always like, oh, yeah, well, I was just in Chicago, or I was just down in, Alabama, or I was just, so he was always traveling. And connecting with people. And like I said, galvanizing people and organizing people. And so he was masterful, at doing that. And so a lot of us, we don't, especially some of these pro-blacks, Brother Knowledge Born. And I tell you, I'm gonna say so-called pro-black. Some of them is, man, he was trying to get us to go with them. Dr. King was saying, look, and shout out to Dr. Kaba Kamene. He and we did a build on Dr. King last year. Dr. Martin Luther King wanted to create a situation for Black people in America that, look, if I'm driving on the road and I get tired, I should be able to pull over and check into any hotel that I please. I shouldn't have to sleep in my car or have to drive 20 miles further to get to a Black hotel, right? You understand? If I'm hungry, I'm on the road with my family. If I'm hungry, I want to be able to pull over, go into a restaurant, get a bite to eat, and go about my business, right? Like, I shouldn't have to drive past the white only restaurants until I get into a Black neighborhood. You understand? So that's the type of stuff that he was, that he was trying to, even with voting. He's like, and he talked about that. He said, man, the right to vote been on the books for a while, but it wasn't enforced. And so he talked about that type of stuff, being able to vote for politicians and utilizing our vote. He talked about that. And then if people would listen to him, he moved beyond that stuff, right? To saying, wait a minute, I'm noticing that our brothers and sisters are living in cramped up, ghettos. We're living in impoverished conditions. Wait a minute. I noticed that he started talking about the black unemployment rate. He started talking about black poverty. He started talking about the housing discrimination in employment. He started moving beyond that stuff. Then it got to a point where he was like, look, man, it needs to be a massive redistribution of wealth and power in this country. And that's when they said, ooh, we got to get him out of here. See, as long as Dr. King was saying, we just want to use your bathroom, we want to vote, we want to be able to sit at the counter with white folks, we want to be able to sleep and live where we want to live, as long as he was doing that. Did he catch a lot of flack for it? Absolutely. But that didn't get him assassinated. What got him assassinated is when he started speaking out against the Vietnam War. And look, Brother Knowledge Boy, like, yes, the Vietnam War. And then when he started saying, nah, we need to redistribute the wealth and power, that's what got him out of here. That's when they said, we got to get him out of here, man. He coming for our power and our wealth. Nah. And he knows how to galvanize the people and organize the people. No. We need to get him out of here. And then what happened? What did J. Edgar Hoover said once Dr. King was assassinated? There will never be another black Messiah, he said, unless we create one. So he looked at, so he viewed him as a black Messiah. And you know what's sad, Brother Knowledge Born, and I'm gonna I'm gonna land my plane. We didn't. So everybody loved Dr. King now, but Dr. King, when he was alive, shout out to his daughter. I think her name is Bernice King or Bernadette King. I think it's Bernice King. She talked about that. She went off on Twitter a year ago. She said, y'all got all this love for him now. She said, but when my father was alive, you couldn't stand him. White folks couldn't stand him and black folks couldn't stand him. He was too radical. Remember, black folks, you had some black folks that would just got, used to things being what they are. And they didn't have the energy to fight anymore. And then you had the white folks who didn't want to bring about change. And so he was hated when he was alive. He was spit on. He was beat. He was jailed. His house got bombed a couple of times. His life was constantly being threatened. So nowadays we want to, it's a holiday. Everybody's smiling. They're playing the I Have a Dream speech. But when this man was walking around, he wasn't respected like that. In fact, when he did the I Have a Dream speech in 1963, even when I spoke to my father and people who lived during that time period, they said it wasn't a big deal back then. It wasn't really big in the black community, like the I Have a Dream. It was just like, oh, okay, they went up to Washington. They had the march, the March on Washington. That was cool. But it wasn't a big thing. It didn't become a big thing until he died, until he was murdered, until he was assassinated. That's when, and I'm going to land my plane. We got to stop doing that, Brother Knowledge Born, that when, we'll have great black people amongst us and we don't value them until something happens. We won't value Dr. Patricia Newton until she transcend. We won't value Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, right? Until she died. Now she's a saint, but when this woman was walking around, amongst us, she was having issues paying taxes in DC. I mean, think about Dr. Ben in the nursing home. But now they, when they die, it's like they're just these gods. But we got to get into the habit of valuing our greats when they are among us. So I salute Nana Marimba Annie. I salute Baba Ashwar Kwesi. I salute Professor James Small. I salute Dr. Kaba Kamene. I salute, did I say Baba Baruti and Mama Ya Baruti? I salute Dr. Obati Shaka. I salute Dr. Wade Nobles. And did I miss anybody, brother? Did I miss anybody?
No.
I salute them. You understand?
Add yourself. I salute you. Okay, can we add you?
Thank you, Dr. Claude Anderson.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, can we
Dr.
add
Claude
you?
Anderson. Thank you.
Right. You see them fire emojis for you, Dr. Maat? Yes, you.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
No, but I'm just saying. But Brother Knowledge Born, what I'm saying is we can't deify these people once they become ancestors. They should be exalted now. Lift them up now. When my elders, and I'm not going to call anybody's name because I don't want to put any words out there, but if you talk to them elders and you ask them about me and they say they need something, I pull through for them. I'm not going to say the elders' names, but I have gotten telephone calls from elders. Look, I need a couple of dollars. My rent needs to be paid. I'm having issues with this, Dr. Maat. Can you help me out? Sure, Baba. Sure, Mama. Here's 250. Here's 500. Here's what I don't sit here and just lift them up and not do anything for them. You understand? I support their books. When they come out with books, when they come out with lectures, when they come on this platform, they get an honorarium. Huh? When they come on this platform, they get an honorarium for their time, their energy, and their wisdom. A lot of us just use these elders up. Brother Knowledge Born, use them to build. A lot of these brothers and sisters use these elders to build their platforms. And when they get their platforms popping, they don't give those elders a daggone. They don't give them a penny. They don't give them a penny. When they come on here, ask them. Go and ask them. Do Dr. Maashi give you an honorarium, Baba, when you come on there? They're going to say, yeah. Mama, when you come on there, does Dr. Maashi give you an honorarium? Yeah. I don't just ask them to come on just to come on. They've been doing that. They've been in the community for decades putting in work. So when they come on, I give them an honorarium. Thank you so much, Mama. Thank you so much, Baba. So we got to get into the habit of taking care of our elders, being there for our elders, right? Look at Dr. Amos Wilson. He was in his apartment 3 days, right? Had a stroke or a heart attack. He was in the apartment 3 days. Why? With all of his supporters, why? Why did that happen? Why wasn't someone doing a wellness check on these elders? And I'm not talking about just checking on them every once in a while. Every day, somebody checking in on our elders. So we got to do a better job with that and lifting them up while they're here. Lifting them up while they're here. But Dr. King, and I'm going to land my plane. I know I said that like 3 times. But Dr. King.
Take your time. Come on, take your time. We love you. Okay, look, take your time, Dr. Okay.
I just fired up when I talk about our elders and our ancestors, I get fired up because I carry them here. I carry them here. I even told my elders, and shout out to Sister Mujay and her husband Kennedy. They did a Kwanzaa event in December, and I got up there and I told the crowd, as long as the ancestors and elders are pleased with my work, I don't give a damn what you all feel or what you all think. I don't. As long as the elders and the ancestors are pleased with my work, I don't give a damn what you all feel. I don't. As long as they are pleased. Shoot. As long as they please. As long as when my heart gets weighed on the scales of my eye, that it is light as a feather. That's what I care about, Brother Knowledge Born. So anyway, I'm going to land my plane. What's your thoughts on Dr. King, Brother Knowledge Born?
I mean, I love him, and we honor him. His life, for his legacy, for his righteous deeds, for his ability to galvanize, to organize, to bring people together. He was a serious threat. He was a serious threat. And oftentimes, again, as we previously discussed, well, I'll start with this. I think for many of us, myself included, and I'm sure you'll identify with what I'm saying as soon as I say it, we had too much of the this or that.
Come on.
So when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was presented to us, he wasn't presented to us organically.
No.
He was presented to us, as the opposite or polar opposite of Malcolm X. So for those who had the fight in us, because we got fight in us, you understand what I'm saying? We're going to identify with the fight. You see what I'm saying? So in self-defense, we're moving this way. You understand what I'm saying? So that was it. We got this spirit of Nat Turner and our ancestors in that space. So we have a fighting kind of space. So it wasn't presented. He was not presented to us in the proper fashion, many of us. You see what I'm saying? We got the watered down, amalgamated version of him, relegated to one speech that he was paid to deliver. One speech that he was paid to deliver. And this is why it's in so much rotation. So that's, becomes the sum total of his life. But that's not the sum total of his life. He was born into a way of life and modeled after his father and his grandfather. He was a genius. He was a genius. He was a child prodigy that walked and being so dutiful, as so many of us were, to our family traditions. We didn't know any other traditions. We didn't know any other ways other than what was laid before us. So this was his way of life from birth. He didn't have any say so. He just wanted to be a dutiful son and walk in his father and his grandfather's footsteps. So he was in the pulpit before he was in the womb space. You understand what I'm saying? So a lot of things come along with that. So he was acculturated a certain kind of way in regards to his thought process from young. And we saw that shining bright light. You alluded to it yesterday with some of his speeches. As a young man, he was like 15, 16 years old in college. He was done with school. One of the things I modeled in my lifetime, I declared it. I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that like Dr. King. You see what I'm saying? As a young child who had an aversion to public school education, because the young black mind then, from his time to my time, into our children's time, that young black mind, that young black man, that black mind that exists in that space the intelligence is not being celebrated. Yet the violence is being degraded. You see what I'm saying? So he also said that rebellion is the language of the oppressed. You see what I'm saying? So when he was talking about, protests in that space, riots is the language of the oppressed. I wanted to get it right. You see what I'm saying? Because he always wanted to get the language right. So him young, an outstanding, brilliant mind. You see what I'm saying? Fearless and bold and audacious. He had a pattern that he was going by. He was groomed in a certain kind of way. There were private organizations that financed his education and his travel young. So they had a hold on his mind. It was not until, being met with a lot of these slings and arrows along the way that he had to get some recollection about what was going on. Dr. King, if we don't take anything else from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, it's proof that it's not how you start the race, it's how you finish the race. He finished the race very strong and very valiant. You see what I'm saying? He had some things along the way we may not agree with. We were not in the position, though. We were not in a position, and it takes something to go against tradition, your tradition that you raised up in. You raised up in it. You see what I'm saying? Like some folks, they might have been born, under a different spiritual system or religious system that they grew up in. So just think about it. You come home and tell your mama you ain't eating pork no more. Your name is Mustafa. You understand what I'm saying? She's like, what? You going to hell? My baby, no. You understand? Like. So just think about that. And that's just a small scale change. You're not coming home saying, hey, I'm moving this way now. I heard this philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi, and I'm doing, I'm going from this direction to this direction now. We're shifting and changing. Oh, it's good to say, Jesus, my personal Lord and Savior. It's a difference between reading about a Jesus and becoming a Jesus.
Say that one more time.
It's a difference in between reading about a Jesus and becoming a Jesus.
Come on.
So the folks who love Jesus, most of them love Jesus for the same reason. He died for my sins. He gave his life. He shed his blood on Calvary for me so I could be a new person, so I can make it into heaven. You're not out here dying. You're not out here being crucified. You are not on the cross. You did not carry a cross 40 miles to your crucifixion after being beat, after being, tarnished and publicly ridiculed. Nobody's slinging you through no mud. They might be making some bad comments about you. They're not physically harming you. Dr. King was physically harmed. He was in a bookstore doing a book signing. A sister walked up and touched his face and stabbed him in the chest. 3 inches from his heart. He said if he would have sneezed, he would have died. I want y'all to understand that. I want y'all to understand that. I want you to understand the man who was jailed hundreds of times, brutalized hundreds of times. And not only did he get brutalized, he had to live the vicarious trauma and direct trauma of seeing this happen to brothers and sisters, to young children and women and men who stood with him.
Teach.
Fire hoses. You call the fire department to put out the fire. You are the fire. You are the target and the force of water hose. What water does to your physical structure, high pressure water hoses. You're the fire that they're seeking to put out. You're the fire that they're seeking to exterminate. Think about that. The police dogs and the tear gas, and he still stood firm to the end of his life. He still stood firm. They were preparing themselves. They went through a rigorous training method to be able to sit somewhere and not get physically violent because it would cost them their life. You weren't sitting in those training sessions where somebody telling you they're going to spit on you, they're going to bash you upside your head, they're going to drag you out of this place, and you cannot fight. You cannot fight back. He's telling the people, mindful, mind to mind, heart to heart, spirit to spirit. You read and turn the other cheek. There was living, turn the other cheek. Reading it, we're reading it. You know, it sounds good in the red letters in the Bible until you out there living it. So people trying to stone you. What did those 4 little girls do to die in that church? What did they do? These are the things that we're missing. This is what happened when you were affiliated with a Christ figure. Because everybody wanted to be, Christ-like. What does it mean to be Christ-like? He said, like anybody, I would like to live a long life, Dr. Maat. Like anybody. He said, but I'm not concerned about that now. I'm just here to do God's will. How many of us are doing God's will in that space? Huh? How many of us are doing God's will in that space and will face tanks and dogs and fire hoses and tear gas and jail and threat of death and death for what you believe in, what you stand on? He said, if a man didn't find something to live for, fit to live for, or die for at the age of 36, as the age that he was, if they became 50, 60, 70, 80, they already died at 36. So when we read the scripture and we hear Jesus say, he who was afraid to lose his life has lost his life. Or he who seeks to save his life will lose his life. But he who is not afraid to give his life will save his life. This is Dr. King's life. He lived that way. He lived that way. How many of us are prepared to live that way? Did you find something worthy to die for?
Not many. Not many.
Many want to be safe. They want to shuck and jive. They want to hide. But they want to play brave in this virtual space. He was brave in the physical space.
Right. Say it,
he was brave in the physical space. So when I talk to my brothers and sisters, they be like, oh, my brothers and them, they locked up. They look crazy at him, Dr. Maat. One brother in particular, he was talking to me about his brother. He said, his brother can't get right. I said, you need to get right with your brother. You need to be right with your brother. I said, you a Christian? He said, yeah. I said, Jesus went to jail. I said, Jesus went to jail. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. went to jail. John the Baptist went to jail. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm talking to the man in his language. I wanted him to understand his brother. I wanted him to understand his brother. For the revolutionaries, Jonathan Jackson was talking about George Jackson. He was talking about his brother. The lady that was with him, she said, "You don't smile no more, Dr. Ma." She's looking at him. You know, sister, look at you. You see, she loved you. She's looking into your heart space. She see you don't went cold. You done got dark on her. You know what I'm saying? She like, you ain't the same as you used to. You got an obsession about your brother and your brother's case and all that. You need to let some of that stuff go. She talking to him. And he said, people have asked him about that. He said, I just smiled and I asked them, what would you do if it was your brother? Dr. King lived a life like that. He didn't forget about his brother or his sister. He didn't forget about his children. So in that I Have a Dream speech, he said, one day my 4 little girls will live in a nation where they'll be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Are we creating this space where our children will grow up in a society where they are judged by the content of their character, or are we still relegated to the color of our skin? Right
Come on, Knowledge.
Search yourself and ask yourself. This man was talking about reparations.
Come on, Knowledge.
The cashing of the check speech that they talk about, that they call the I Have a Dream speech. He was talking about repair. He was talking about Black economics. He said, take your money out of their banks and put them in the Black banks. This is what he said on April the 3rd, 1968 in Tennessee. Another reason why he was assassinated. He was talking, it wasn't lip service.
No.
He was talking about the insurance companies. Oh, there are 2 or 3 Black insurance companies. Get your insurance there.
Come on. Like
so
you said, Black
everybody's
economics.
moving. They're talking to Black economics now, right? They're acting like they came up with it overnight. Come on. It's like stop playing. There's so many things that are there that get lost in translation and missed. We don't have a Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture without the Dr. Martin Luther King. We don't have the term Black Power that came from Baba Mukasa Ricks. You see what I'm saying? Without that Dr. Martin Luther King, they were with him. SCLC, SNCC, Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. You have to think about all of these organizations that were happening that sprung up out of that space of rebellion. Why aren't we talking about Medgar Evers?
Come on, Knowledge.
Do we know that Kwame Nkrumah got the motivation to go back and fight an armed resistance to free a region of West Africa by being here in the United States and seeing Black people fight against and rebel against oppressive government and system? Do we know that? Do we know that we come from people who put their lives and their money where their mouth was to help arm to free West Africa from 1957 to 1972? Do we know that? Do we know that these leaders were meeting together? Do you know that they were organizing together? Do you know that Reverend Jameson and them in Louisiana sparked them and gave them the reason for the bus boycott? Do you know how interconnected they were? That's where the bus boycott came from. And that's why it was so effective. It wasn't a one and done type of experience. It was something that had worked artfully over there. We got to search ourselves. We have to search our history. We have to see the connections. Stop letting these outsiders decide who we're going to honor and who we're going to pay homage to. Because if they could do it with him, they could do it with you.
Come on.
If they could do it with him, they could do it with you. All this revisionism.
Come on.
All of this revisionism and changing of the story and switching up the narrative. Now you're looking for something in someone outside of yourself, and you're no longer looking with it. Dr. King said, don't let anybody take your manhood. Are they not taking manhood? Is manhood optional today, Dr. Maat? Are they playing with it? Are they calling it toxic masculinity and all this other stuff? Are they taking your manhood right now? Is manhood optional? Is black manhood optional? Is black familyhood optional? We're looking in these books and we got all of this inclination towards this and that. The Holy Quran say, where you find no good men, you'll find no good women. So everything you got to say about a black woman, she reflecting a society that don't allow her to be no black woman. They're taking the manhood, the womanhood. You know, in the marches, we saw some of our ancestors with the signs that says, I am a man. In a society that looked at us as subhuman, 3/5 of a human being. So that redeeming power and force that was Dr. Martin Luther King and so many others is something to be celebrated. The March on Washington started because they had firebombed this house for the second time. And the people went to the streets. And they said they was going to go to the places where they couldn't land any planes. They said they was going to the Capitol to take it over. They said they can't kill us all. That's the people you come from. That's the people that was a part of the civil rights movement that we don't hear nothing about. We need to have an understanding about that. We need to have an understanding of how and who we are and how things got done and how things are getting done. And why programs like Dr. Maat's program is so important. Why the Uhuru Academy is so important.
And Do the Knowledge Radio. And why Do the Knowledge Radio is important. And I want to shout out to Baba Amin. The Uhuru Academy is in the building. Peace and love to Baba. He did have a beautiful program that he did earlier on Dr. King. Early this morning. I think it was around 11. Was it 11 a.m.? Because I got a notification. I want to say it was roughly around 11 o'clock. So shout out to the Uhuru Academy, Baba Amin, and his divine compliment, Mama and Koyo. But hold up, I got to drop a bomb. I got to drop a bomb for you now. Fire! 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 Oh my gosh, you were spitting that fire.
I just wanted to say, like, we have to understand and decide for ourselves. We cannot allow outsiders anymore and those misinformed about our ancestors, about our history, about our plight, about our struggle to be the driving force on how it's displayed. We definitely can do that no longer.
Ashe. Sister Jacqueline, the Uhuru Academy is an online educational institution for Black children. So Baba's in the chat. He can put your link in the chat. Sister Jacqueline Mace, she said, where is it? And then they also have a campus in South Carolina. But if you're not in South Carolina, you can enroll your child on its online program. My son Jalen, he's in the school. He's a part of it. So I'm not just pumping it up and saying, oh, Uhuru Academy, and you know, and my children aren't involved. You know what I mean? Knowledge more, because a lot of people will do that. They'll make suggestions and recommendations for other people that they don't adhere to themselves, right? And so I always, if I ask my supporters and people I'm connected to, if I ask them to purchase a book, I'll hold up the book to show you, or I'll purchase live. If I say, hey, I want you all to donate to these people over here, I'll go live and donate. You know, I try to make sure that I lead by example. And so the Uhuru Academy is the number one, in my opinion. Well, all of them are number one when I think of the Zayax Institute and Akabin House and Freedom Home Academy. It's just I just decided to go with the Uhuru Academy because of the relationship, not only the curriculum, because like I said, all of these African center schools have beautiful curriculums and beautiful instructors, but I have a relationship, you know, with Baba Amin and Mama and Koyo. So it felt natural to go over there. You know what I mean? But definitely, family, make sure that your child is receiving an African-centered education. Okay. You want them to learn this stuff that we're talking about today? Well, give them an African centered education. Not to go on a detour, but I do want to go on a quick detour, but I'm not going to stay on that quick detour. The Hoover Academy, I was so impressed. It's a couple of things that impressed me. There's multiple things that impressed me. One, the curriculum, the tools, the curriculum, the pedagogy, phenomenal. Okay, centered around our history, our culture, and our psychology. Jalen absolutely loves it. In comparison to private school, I mean public school, he loves the Uhuru Academy. He's like, it's never like he has a ball, with Baba Amin and Mama and Koyo and all of the other students. But the curriculum and pedagogy, fire. Okay. Then you also have, I love when Baba goes into our story. The children they were discussing the black, the Harlem Renaissance. I'm sorry, the Harlem Renaissance. So he did a lecture series on the Harlem Renaissance. The children had to do presentations on that. And then they don't celebrate Halloween. So they had an ancestor veneration party where the students had to dress up as someone. And my son dressed up as W.E.B. Du Bois or Dubois. And he came in and he did a presentation on that. So they had all of the different students pick someone, Muhammad Ali or something, and dress up as the person and then come in to give a presentation. See, this is the type of education that Black children should be receiving. They also have a Black History Month program, okay? Anybody who has their child in the public school system, you already know that they stopped having Black History Month programs for the past few years. It hasn't been, I'm going to say, shoot, I noticed in the past 6 or 7 years, there hasn't been in Baltimore, there hasn't been a Black History Month program. They started talking about, it's not inclusive. We don't want to make other ethnic groups feel some type of way. So they stopped having it. But not at the Uhuru Academy. They had a beautiful Black History Month program. I came and I was the keynote speaker. And so we recorded it. It was beautiful, Brother Knowledge Born. But they had, those kids, they were singing a song, Lift Every Voice. They poured libations. They talked about what different quotes and what different ancestors meant. Family, get your children in the Uhuru Academy. Get your children in the Uhuru Academy. I just have to plug that because it works. African-centered education is for African children. Get your children out of the public school system. Get them in the Uhuru Academy. Now, I do want to correct myself, Knowledge Born. Earlier, I said that when Dr. King said that the true goal of education is the cultivation of intelligence plus character, I said he wrote it in a paper, and I say he was about 15, 16. He was actually 18. He published a paper. I'm looking at it right now. It's called The Purpose of Education by Dr. Martin Luther King, Morehouse College student paper. It says The Maroon Tiger in 1947. So he was born in 1929, right? We're talking about 1947. So he was 18 when he wrote the paper. But even family, if you read the daggone paper, I'm telling you, it still reads like he's not 18 years. It's like you would think that he was 30 or 40 years old writing this paper. But I wanted to make sure that I gave our people proper information. I said that he was 15 at the time that he wrote it, and he was actually 18 at the time. But I want to shift gears, Brother Knowledge Born, and I want to play this speech. And it's not long. It's not long. And family, what are we doing tonight? We are celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. We're celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. Brother Knowledge Born, do you remember his speech called The Other America?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, like people, Brother Knowledge Born, they keep playing the I Have a Dream speech. Oh my gosh. He went in this speech. He said it's two Americas. And he described the America that so-called white people experience and the America that so-called Black people experience. Then he went into he talked about the racial wealth gap. Now, he didn't say racial wealth gap, but he started talking about the disparities in income, the disparities the disparities in housing. He defined for us what racism is. He equated racism with genocide. I think he said the logic of racism is genocide. I mean, he talked about that. He talked about how, laws won't change the heart of man, but it will at least regulate and govern the behavior of men. And then he said, if you change the habits of men, You know, eventually, if you change the habits of men, maybe you'll change the heart. He also talked about what genuine equality was. He said, yeah, it's easier, you know, to integrate a lunch counter, right? Or to integrate basically public, you know, public facilities. But he said it's even harder when you want to close those income disparities, right? When you want to close that income gap, when you want to integrate actual neighborhoods. And so he talked about all of this stuff, but this is the speech that this is the speech that they don't talk about. Look. Libby said, I watched this video today. Ashe. So here we go, family. Let me make sure that I'm sharing my screen, because I start playing stuff, Brother Knowledge Born, and then people will be telling me they can't hear anything. So let me make sure the audio is shared. And family, let's just listen to this. Let's listen to this. And this isn't a long speech. Here we go.
Dean Napier, Mr. Bell, members of the faculty and members of the student body of this great institution of learning, ladies and gentlemen. Now, there are several things that one could talk about before such a large, concerned, and enlightened audience. There are so many problems facing our nation and our world that one could just take off anywhere. But today I would like to talk mainly about the race problem, since I'll have to rush right out and go to New York to talk about Vietnam tomorrow, and I've been talking about it a great deal this week and weeks before that. But I'd like to use as a subject from which to speak this afternoon the other America. And I use this subject because there are literally two Americas. One America is beautiful for situation. And in a sense, this America is overflowing with the milk of prosperity and the honey of opportunity. This America is the habitat of millions of people who have food and material necessities for their bodies, culture and education for their minds, freedom and human dignity for their spirits. In this America, millions of people experience every day the opportunity of having life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in all of their dimensions. And in this America, millions of young people grow up in the sunlight of opportunity. But tragically and unfortunately, there is another America. This other America has a daily ugliness about it that constantly transforms the buoyancy of hope into the fatigue of despair. In this America, millions of work-starved men walk the streets daily in search for jobs that do not exist. In this America, millions of people find themselves living in rat-infested, vermin-filled slums. In this America, people are poor by the millions. And they find themselves perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. In a sense, the greatest tragedy of this other America is what it does to little children. little children in this other America are forced to grow up with clouds of inferiority forming every day in their little mental skies. And as we look at this other America, we see it as an arena of blasted hopes and shattered dreams. Many people of various backgrounds live in this other America. Some are Mexican Americans, some are Puerto Ricans, some are Indians, some happen to be from other groups. Millions of them are Appalachian whites. Probably the largest group in this other America in proportion to its size in the population is the American Negro. The American Negro finds himself living in a triple ghetto, a ghetto of race, a ghetto of poverty, a ghetto is to deal with this problem of the two Americas. We are seeking to make America one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now let me say that the struggle for civil rights, or the struggle to make these two Americas one America, is much more difficult today than it was 5 or 10 years ago. For about a decade or maybe 12 years, we've struggled all across the South in glorious struggles to get rid of legal, overt segregation and all of the humiliation that surrounded that system of segregation. In a sense, this was a struggle for decency. We could not go to a lunch counter in so many instances and get a hamburger or a cup of coffee. We could not make use of public accommodations. Public transportation was segregated, and often we had to sit in the back, and within transportation within cities, we often had to stand over empty seats because sections were reserved for whites only. We did not have the right to vote in so many areas of the South. And the struggle was to deal with these problems. Now, certainly they were difficult problems. They were humiliating conditions. By the thousands, we protested these conditions. We made it clear that it was ultimately more honorable to accept jail cell experiences than to accept segregation and humiliation. By the thousands, students and adults decided to sit in at segregated lunch counters to protest conditions there. When they were sitting at those lunch counters, they were in reality standing up for the best in the American dream and seeking to take the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the formulation of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Many things were gained as a result of these years of struggle. In 1964, the Civil Rights Bill came into being after the Birmingham movement, which did a great deal to subpoena the conscience of a large segment of the nation to appear before the judgment seat of morality on the whole question of civil rights. After the Selma movement in 1965, we were able to get a voting rights bill. Now, all of these things represented strides, but we must see that the struggle today is much more difficult. It's more difficult today because we are struggling now for genuine equality. It's much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee a livable income and a good, solid job. It's much easier to guarantee the right to vote than it is to guarantee the right to live in sanitary, decent housing conditions. It is much easier to integrate a public park than it is to make genuine quality integrated education a reality. And so today we are struggling for something which says we demand genuine equality. It's not merely a struggle against extremist behavior toward Negroes. And I'm convinced that many of the very people who supported us in the struggle in the South are not willing to go all the way now. I came to see this in a very difficult and painful way in Chicago.
Did you all hear what he just said, Brother Knowledge Boy? He calling out white folks right now. He said that, hold up, it was easier to do all of that, but the people who were the white folks who were with that, he said, I don't think they want to go all the way, right? With real genuine equality, meaning that we have the same amount of wealth, the same amount of income. You get what I'm saying? The same amount. No, he said they were fine with the integrating lunch counters and help you with the voting. But he said the people that were riding with them on that, he said, I don't know if they're going to really want to struggle for what he called genuine equality. Come on, Dr. King. And he going to call out white folks some more. Stay tuned.
Over the last year where I've lived and worked, some of the people who came quickly to march with us in Selma and Birmingham were active around Chicago. And I came to see that so many people who supported morally and even financially what we were doing in Birmingham and Selma were really outraged against the extremist behavior of Bull Connor and Jim Clark toward Negroes, rather than believing in genuine equality for Negroes. And I think this is what we've got to see now, and this is what makes the struggle much more difficult. So as a result of all of this, we see many problems existing today that are growing more difficult. It's something that is often overlooked, but Negroes generally live in worse slums today than 20 or 25 years ago. In the North, schools are more segregated today than they were in 1954 when the Supreme Court's decision on desegregation was rendered. Economically, the Negro is worse off today than he was 15 and 20 years ago. And so the unemployment rate among whites at one time was about the same as the unemployment rate among Negroes. But today the unemployment rate among Negroes is twice that of whites. And the average income of the Negro is today 50% less than whites. And as we look at these problems, we see them growing and developing every day. We see the fact that the Negro economically is facing a depression in his everyday life that is more staggering than the depression of the 30s. The unemployment rate of the nation as a whole is about 4%. Statistics would say from the Labor Department that among Negroes it's about 8.4%. But these are the persons who are in the labor market, who still go to employment agencies to seek jobs, and so they can be calculated. The statistics can be gotten because they are still somehow in the labor market. But there are hundreds of thousands of Negroes who have given up. They've lost hope. They've come to feel that life is a long and desolate corridor for them with no exit sign. And so they no longer go to look for a job. There are those who would estimate that these persons who are called the discouraged persons would be 6 or 7% in the Negro community. And that means that unemployment among Negroes may well be 16%. Among Negro youth in some of our large urban areas, it goes to 30 and 40%. And so you can see what I mean when I say that in the Negro community, that is a major, tragic, and staggering depression that we face in our everyday lives. Now, the other thing that we've got to come to see now that many of us didn't see too well during the last 10 years, that is that racism is still alive in American society and much more widespread than we realize. We must see racism for what it is. It is a myth of the superior and the inferior race. It is the false and tragic notion that one particular group, one particular race is responsible for all of the progress, all of the insights, and the total flow of history. And the theory that another group or another race is totally depraved, innately impure, and innately inferior. In the final analysis, racism is evil because its ultimate logic is genocide. Hitler was a sick and tragic man who carried racism to its logical conclusion. He ended up leading a nation to the point of killing about 6 million Jews. And this is the tragedy of racism because its ultimate logic is genocide. If one says that I am not good enough to live next door to him, if one says that I am not good enough to eat at a lunch counter, or to have a good, decent job, or to go to school with him, merely because of my race, he is saying consciously or unconsciously, I do not deserve to exist. To use a philosophical analogy here, racism is not based on some empirical generalization. It is based rather on an ontological affirmation. It is not the assertion that certain people are behind culturally or otherwise because of environmental conditions. It is the affirmation that the very being of a people is inferior. And this is the great tragedy of it. I say that however unpleasant it is, we must honestly see and admit that racism is still deeply rooted all over America. It's still deeply rooted in the North, and it's still deeply rooted in the South. Now, this leads me to say something about another discussion that we hear a great deal, and that is the so-called white backlash. I would like to honestly say to you that the white backlash is merely a new name for an old phenomenon. It's not something that just came into being because shouts of black power, or because Negroes engaged in riots in Watts, for instance. The fact is that the state of California voted a fair housing bill out of existence before anybody shouted black power, or before anybody rioted in Watts. It may well be that shouts of black power and riots in Watts and the Harlems and the other areas are the consequences of the white backlash rather than the cause of them. What it is necessary to see is that there has never been a single solid, monistic, determined commitment on the part of the vast majority of white Americans, the whole question of civil rights and on the whole question of racial equality. This is something that truth impels all men of goodwill to admit. It is said on the Statue of Liberty that America...
Hold on, Brother Knowledge Born. Did he just tell the people that, talking about white backlash, and he was saying that Black rioting and us screaming Black power is a consequence of white backlash. And did he also talk about how the whole of white America never like when it comes to equality and standing up, the whole of white America did not do. Did he say that? Did I miss anything, Brother Knowledge Boy?
No.
Did he call out the whole of white America?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because they always think that he's calling out a lot of stuff in this speech, and he's doing it very eloquently and very calmly, but he's saying a whole lot. Hold on, family. Here we go. We will keep on rolling.
Is the home of exiles. But it doesn't take us long to realize that America has been the home of its white exiles from Europe. But it has not evinced the same kind of maternal care and concern for its black exiles from Africa. It is no wonder that in one of his sorrow songs, a Negro could sing out, "Sometimes I feel like a motherless child." What great estrangement, what great sense of rejection caused the people to emerge with such a metaphor as they looked over their lives. What I'm trying to get across is that our nation has constantly taken a positive step forward on the question of racial justice and racial equality. But over and over again, at the same time, it made certain backward steps. And this has been the persistence of the so-called white backlash. In 1863, the Negro was freed from the bondage of physical slavery. But at the same time, the nation refused to give him land to make that freedom meaningful. And at that same period, America was giving millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that America was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor that would make it possible to grow and develop, and refused to give that economic floor to its black peasants, so to speak. And this is why Frederick Douglass could say that emancipation for the Negro was freedom to hunger, freedom to the winds and rains of heaven, freedom without roofs to cover their heads. He went on to say that it was freedom without bread to eat, freedom without land to cultivate. It was freedom and famine at the same time. But it does not stop there. In 1875, the nation passed a civil rights bill and refused to enforce it. In 1964, the nation passed a weaker civil rights bill. And even to this day, that bill has not been totally enforced in all of its dimensions. The nation heralded a new day of concern for the poor, for the poverty-stricken, for the disadvantaged, and brought into being a poverty bill. But at the same time, it put such little money into the program that it was hardly and still remains hardly a good skirmish against poverty. White politicians in suburbs talk eloquently against open housing, and in the same breath contend that they are not racist. Now, all of this and all of these things tell us that America has been backlashing on the whole question of basic constitutional and God-given rights for Negroes and other disadvantaged groups for more than 300 years. So these conditions, persistence of widespread poverty, of slums, and of tragic conditions in schools and other areas of life, all of these things have brought about a great deal of despair and a great deal of desperation, a great deal of disappointment and even bitterness in the Negro communities. Today, all of our cities confront huge problems. All of our cities are potentially powder kegs as a result of the continued existence of these conditions. Many in moments of anger, many in moments of deep bitterness, engage in riots. Let me say, as I've always said, and I will always continue to say, that riots are socially destructive and self-defeating. I'm still convinced that nonviolence is the most potent weapon available to oppress people in their struggle for freedom and justice. I feel that violence will only create more social problems than they will solve. That in a real sense it is impractical for the Negro to even think of mounting a violent revolution in the United States. So I will continue to condemn riots and continue to say to my brothers and sisters that this is not the way. Continue to affirm that there is another way. But at the same time, it is as necessary for me to be as vigorous in condemning the conditions which cause persons to feel that they must engage in riotous activities as it is for me to condemn riots. I think America must see that riots do not develop out of thin air. Certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. What is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity. And so in a real sense, our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay. And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these recurrences of violence and riots over and over again. Social justice and progress are the absolute guarantors of riot prevention. Now let me go on to say that if we are to deal with all of the problems that I've talked about, if we are to bring America to the point that we have one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, there are certain things that we must do. The job ahead must be massive and positive. We must develop massive action programs all over the United States of America in order to deal with the problems that I have mentioned. Now, in order to develop these massive action programs, we've got to get rid of one or two false notions that continue to exist in our society. One is the notion that only time can solve the problem of racial injustice. I'm sure you've heard this idea. It is the notion almost that is something in the very flow of time that will miraculously cure all evils. And I've heard this over and over again. There are those, and they're often sincere people, who say to Negroes and their allies in the white community that we should slow up and just be nice and patient and continue to pray, and in 100 or 200 years the problem will work itself out, because only time can solve the problem. I think that...
Brother Knowledge Born, I just got to interject. He's calling out white folks during the whole time. He talked about white backlash, Brother Knowledge Born.
In a room full, like the audience you saw him on the stage. Right. Come on, stop.
All white. He's saying, man, he said, you all are more concerned with other things than, equality and equity and humanity. He called that out. He said, the whole of you all aren't. He said, he's selling, like I said, he's articulating himself very eloquently, very calmly, but he's saying a whole lot. He calling them out. He's even calling out the white folks that say, just give it some time. This stuff kind of stuff a blow over. He's calling white people out the whole time. And you got black folks who wouldn't even say some of this stuff to white folks today. I mean, to their face. You get what I'm saying? Like you said, it's a room full of white folks, and he's calling them out. And he said some stuff about black folks. I'm gonna condemn, the riots and the violence. But he said, if I'm gonna do that, then I have to also condemn. He said, if not more, the conditions that create the riots and the violence. I don't know. Let me just keep on playing it, brother.
See, he did that. He did that, and then at the end of that statement, like he slow walked him through it. He's like, "Oh no, I'm not with that," and blah blah blah. Violence ain't the answer, and blah blah blah. But what's happening? What's happening to cause this? You see what I'm saying? So,
come on.
If this riot is the language of the unheard, he said, what is America failing to hear? You understand what I'm saying? What is America failing to hear? So he's like, look, okay, I'm gonna say I'm not for this or for that, and I'm gonna condemn this. However, you're missing this point, right?
Come on.
What I'm saying? You're talking about the effect and not the cause. So it was artful, masterful.
Very masterful. Here we go.
That is an answer to that myth, and it is that time is neutral. It can be used either constructively or destructively. And I'm absolutely convinced that the forces of ill will in our nation, the extreme righteous in our nation, have often used time much more effectively than the forces of goodwill. And it may well be that we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words of the bad people and the violent actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence and indifference of the good people who sit around and say, wait on time. Somewhere we must come to see that social progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals, and without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. And so we must help time, and we must realize that the time is always right to do right. Now, there's another notion that gets out. It's around everywhere. It's in the South, it's in the North, it's in California, and all over our nation. It's a notion that legislation can't solve the problem. It can't do anything in this area. And those who project this argument contend that you've got to change the heart, and that you can't change the heart through legislation. Now, I would be the first one to say that there is real need for a lot of heart changing in our country, and I believe in changing the heart. I preach about it. I believe in the need for conversion in many instances and regeneration, to use theological terms. And I would be the first to say that if the race problem in America is to be solved, the white person must treat the Negro right, not merely because the law says it, but because it's natural, because it's right, and because the Negro is his brother. And so I realize that if we are to have a truly integrated society, men and women will have to rise to the majestic heights of being obedient to the unenforceable. But after saying this, let me say another thing which gives the other side, and that is that although it may be true that morality cannot be legislated, behavior can be regulated. Even though it may be true that the law cannot change the heart, it can restrain the heartless. Even though it may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, it can restrain him from lynching me. And I think that's pretty important also. And so while the law may not change the hearts of men, it can and it does change the habits of men. And when you begin to change the habits of men, pretty soon the attitudes will be changed. Pretty soon the hearts will be changed. I'm convinced that we still need strong civil rights legislation. There's a bill before Congress right now to have a national federal open housing bill, a federal law declaring discrimination in housing unconstitutional, and also a bill to make the administration of justice real all over our country. Now, nobody can doubt the need for this. Nobody can doubt the need if he thinks about the fact that since 1963, some 58 Negroes and white civil rights workers have been brutally murdered in the state of Mississippi alone. Not a single person has been convicted for these dastardly crimes. There have been some indictments, but no one has been convicted. So there is a need for the whole question of the administration of justice. There is a need for fair housing laws all over our country. And it is tragic indeed that Congress last year allowed this bill to die. And that bill died in Congress. A bit of democracy died, a bit of our commitment to justice died. If it happens again in this session of Congress, greater degree of our commitment to democratic principles will die. And I can see no more dangerous trend in our country than the constant developing of predominantly Negro central cities ringed by white suburbs. This is only inviting social disaster. And the only way this problem will be solved is by the nation taking a strong stand and by state governments taking a strong stand against housing segregation and against discrimination in all of these areas. Now, there's another thing that I'd like to mention as I talk about the massive action program, and time will not permit me to go into specific programmatic action to any great degree. But it must be realized now that the Negro cannot solve the problem by himself. There again, there are those who always say to Negroes, why don't you do something for yourself? Why don't you lift yourselves by your own bootstraps? And we hear this over and over again. Now, certainly, there are many things that we must do for ourselves and that only we can do for ourselves. Certainly, we must develop within a sense of dignity and self-respect that nobody else can give us, a sense of manhood, a sense of personhood, a sense of not being ashamed of our heritage, not being ashamed of our color. It was wrong and tragic that the Negro ever allowed himself to be ashamed of the fact that he was black, or ashamed of the fact that his ancestral home was Africa. And so there's a great deal.
Wait a minute, Brother Knowledge Born. Did Dr. Martin Luther King acknowledge that our ancestral home was Africa? And did he promote race pride and race dignity in this speech where he talked about so much, Brother Knowledge Born? He's talking about so much. He talked about politics. He talked about economics. He talked about laws, the importance of legislation. He called out white backlash. He talked about riots. And as you stated earlier, riots being the language of the unheard, right? Now he's going into, the whole myth of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and you have no damn straps, right? So like he said so much in this speech, all right? So much, and it's almost over, family. It's almost over. All right, but he's saying so much, but here we go.
That the Negro can do to develop self-respect. There's a great deal that the Negro must do and can do to amass political and economic power. within his own community and by using his own resources. So we must do certain things for ourselves, but this must not negate the fact and cause the nation to overlook the fact that the Negro cannot solve the problem himself. A man was on the plane with me some weeks ago, and he came and talked with me, and he said, the problem, Dr. King, that I see with what you all are doing is that every time I see you and other Negroes, you are protesting, and you aren't doing anything for yourself. He went on to tell me that he was very poor at one time, and he was able to make it by doing something for himself. Why don't you teach your people, he said, to lift themselves by their own bootstraps? And then he went on to say other groups face disadvantages, the Irish, the Italians, and he went down the line. And I said to him that it does not help the Negro, it only deepens his frustration for unfeeling and sensitive people to say to him that other ethnic groups who migrated were immigrants to this country just 100 years ago or so have gotten beyond him, and he came here some 344 years ago. And I went on to remind him the Negro came to this country involuntarily in chains, while others came voluntarily. I went on to remind him that no other racial group has been a slave on American soil. I went on to remind him that the other problem that we have faced over the years is that the society placed a stigma on the color of the Negro, on the color of his skin, because he was black. Doors were closed to him that were not closed to other groups. And I'm to say to people that you ought to lift yourself by your own bootstraps, but it is a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. The fact is that millions of Negroes, as a result of centuries of denial and neglect, have been left bootless. And they find themselves impoverished aliens in this affluent society. And that is a great deal that the society can and must do if the Negro is to gain the economic security that he needs. Now, one of the answers, it seems to me, is a guaranteed annual income, a guaranteed minimum income for all people and for all families of our country. It seems to me that the civil rights movement must now begin to organize for the guaranteed annual income, begin to organize people all over our country and mobilize forces so that we can bring to the attention of our nation this need and this something which I believe will go a long, long way toward dealing with the Negro's economic problem and the economic problem with many other poor people confronting our nation. Now, I said I wasn't going to talk about Vietnam, but I can't make a speech without mentioning some of the problems that we face there, because I think this war has diverted attention from civil rights. It has strengthened the forces of reaction in our country and has brought to the forefront the military-industrial complex that even President Eisenhower warned us against at one time. And above all, it is destroying human lives. It's destroying the lives of thousands of the young, promising men of our nation, destroying the lives of little boys and little girls in Vietnam. But one of the greatest things that this war is doing to us in civil rights is that it is allowing the great society to be shot down on the battlefields of Vietnam every day. And I submit this afternoon that we can end poverty in the United States. Our nation has the resources to do it. The national gross product of America will rise to the astounding figure of some $7 this year. We have the resources. The question is whether the nation has the will. And I submit that if we can spend $5 billion a year to fight an ill-considered war in Vietnam and $20 billion to put a man on the moon, our nation can spend billions of dollars even on their own 2 feet right here on earth. Let me say another thing that's more in the realm of the spirit, I guess. That is, if we are to go on in the days ahead and make true brotherhood a reality, it is necessary for us to realize more than ever before that the destinies of the Negro and the white man are tied together. Now, there's still a lot of people who don't realize this. The races still don't realize this. But it is a fact now that Negroes and whites are tied together. And we need each other. The Negro needs the white man to save him from his fear. The white man needs the Negro to save him from his guilt. We are tied together in so many ways: our language, our music, our cultural patterns, our material prosperity, and even our food are an amalgam of black and white. So there can be no separate black path to power and fulfillment that does not intersect white roots. There can be no separate white path to power and fulfillment short of social disaster. It does not recognize the need of sharing that power with black aspirations for freedom and justice. We must come to see now that integration is not merely a romantic or aesthetic something where you merely add color to a still predominantly white power structure. Integration must...
Wait a minute, Brother Knowledge Born. Did he just say that, because you know how we applaud like black first when we put a black face in a white power structure? Did he say that wasn't truly, like integration? Like, is he calling out that sort of thing? Because you know how people will say, oh no, it's diverse, even though it's a white institution. Remember, people got mad with me, Brother Knowledge Born, when, I called out the black woman who's the president of Harvard University. They said I was hating on her. And I'm like, it's still a white institution. It's just a black face, in that position of power, right? But this is still a white institution. It's still governed by white people, funded by white people. It's what Dr. James Holly Jr. Would call a white historical college and university. That's what it is. And so, but it's still fundamentally white in historically, culturally, politically, economically, right? It's still white, and he's calling that foolishness out. Hold on. We almost finished. We got 3 minutes.
Like he said that, and Muhammad Ali said the same thing.
Go ahead, Brother Knowledge Born. Say it one more time.
My bad. Yeah, Muhammad Ali, whose birthday is tomorrow, right?
We're gonna be going live every day, Brother Knowledge Born. We're gonna be going live tomorrow too. Go ahead, Brother.
He said the same. He said the same thing in the boxing ring because the question was asked to him about, well, what about integration? He said, "What are you calling integration?" You see what I'm saying? He said, "So we come together and integrate in a society where you still own everything, you still in control of everything." He said that's not integration. You see what I'm saying? So it's a double down of what's being conveyed right here. You see what I'm saying? It's like how you in ruling power, you in control, and to operate on and control the destiny of it. You see what I'm saying? So how is it integration? How it's not a?
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. Here we go. Let me see. Here we go. 3 more minutes.
And where black men and white men share power together to build a new and a great nation. In a real sense, we all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. John Donne placed it years ago in graphic terms: no man is an island entire itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. He goes on toward the end to say, any man's death diminishes me because I'm involved in mankind. Therefore never sin to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. And so we all in the same situation. The salvation of the Negro will mean the salvation of the white man, and the destruction, the life, and of the ongoing progress of the Negro will be the destruction of the ongoing progress of the nation. Now let me say finally that we have difficult days ahead, but I haven't despaired. Somehow I maintain hope in spite of hope, and I've talked about the difficulties and how hard the problems will be as we tackle them. But I want to close by saying this afternoon that I still have faith in the future, and I still believe that these problems can be solved. And so I will not join anyone who will say that we still can't develop a coalition of conscience. I realize and understand the discontent and the agony and the disappointment and even the bitterness of those who feel that whites in America cannot be trusted. And I would be the first to say that there are all too many who are still guided by the racist ethos. And I am still convinced.
Did you hear what he just said, Knowledge? Like, did you hear what he said about black folks who feel like whites can't be trusted? And he was like, I agree. Is a lot of them are still, I see what you're saying, but he still has hope. That's what he's getting ready to say. But he's just saying, I see. Knowledge, did you hear this?
There are still many white persons of goodwill, and I'm happy to say that I see them every day in the student generation, who cherish democratic principles and justice above principle, and who will stick with the cause of justice and the cause of civil rights and the cause of peace throughout the days ahead. And so I refuse to despair. I think we're going to achieve our freedom, because however much America strays away from the ideals of justice, the goal of America is freedom. Abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up in the destiny of America. Before the Pilgrim Fathers landed at Plymouth, we were here. Before Jefferson etched across the pages of history the majestic words of the Declaration of Independence, we were here. Before the beautiful words of the Star-Spangled Banner were written, we were here. For more than 2 centuries, our forebears labored here without wages. They made cotton king. They built the homes of their masters in the midst of the most humiliating and oppressive conditions. Yet out of a bottomless vitality, they continued to grow and develop. And I say that if the inexpressible cruelties of slavery couldn't stop us, the opposition that we now face, including the so-called white backlash, will surely fail. We're going to win our freedom, because both the sacred head of our nation and the eternal will of the Almighty God are embodied in our echoing demands. And so I can still sing, we shall overcome. We shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. We shall overcome because Carlyle is right. No lie can live forever. We shall overcome because William Cullen Bryant is right. Truth-crushed earth will rise again. We shall overcome because James Russell Lowell is right. Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yet that scaffold sways the future. With faith, we will be able to hew out of the mounting of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into to a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to speed up the day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and live together as brothers and sisters all over this great nation. That will be a great day. That will be a great tomorrow. In the word, sure to speak symbolically, that will be the day when the morning stars will sing together and the sons of God will shout for joy. Thank you.
Ashe.
Fire! 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 Fire!
Did he get a standing ovation? Were they on their feet?
They were on their feet, brother Knowledge
feet?
Born. They were on their feet, brother Knowledge Born. But I'm gonna drop the link to the video, the speech, because some people were saying, "What are we watching? What are we watching?" There was a speech that Dr. Martin Luther King did. It had it been obviously during Vietnam, right? So you know what, 66, 67, around that time, he gave this speech called "The Other America." Somebody Google it and let me know in the chat. When did he?
68.
He did it in 68.
Yeah, this is a month before he was assassinated.
All right, so the Other America is the Other America. He gave that in 68. Where was he, brother Knowledge Born?
March 12, 1968 in Grosse Pointe, Michigan.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much for that. So I dropped the link, family, to the speech in the chat. That's one of those speeches that you have to go back and listen to, because this is like the second time I listened to it, but I need to go back, and I caught like some things that I didn't catch the first time. And so this is like one of those speeches where you had to listen to it, for me, that I would have to listen to it over and over again to kind of like just catch everything. You know, I'm one of those folks. I like to understand the fullness of things. Brother Knowledge Born. So it may take me a few times to go back in and listen. But you held up a couple of books, Brother Knowledge Born, during his speech. You held up Blueprint for Black Power. And I want to say you also held up, I believe that was the Falsification. Was that Falsification?
This was Black on Black Violence, Dr.
Black on Black Violence. Yeah. So break that down. Show both of those books again, Brother Knowledge Born, and tell the people before we close out, why did you hold up those books, you know, during that particular time?
Well, Dr. King was making reference to the conversation that he was having with the gentleman who said that he was talking about, you know, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. When he said like the notion of pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, that was something that was addressed in this timeline, you know, that we referenced a couple of days ago, Dr. Maat, when we were speaking about Dr. Amos Wilson, we were paying tribute to him. So this is proof, you know, since 1675, that these things were happening, that all you had to do was make it here. And if you made it here, you see what I'm saying? So when he made reference to saying to a person who didn't have boots, to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You didn't have any boots. So this is a point where, you know, Dr. Wilson, peace and blessings be upon him, was illustrating the systematic advantage that was given to quote unquote poor whites and immigrants that made it here to America. This is why it was calling this place the land of milk and honey. So that was that reference. And then he was making reference to the space about the riots, and when he was talking about condemning the riots and riots being the language of the unheard, in here, you know, as I read, as we closed yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, it was yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where it was on page 10, I believe I read. Black male criminality is the stepchild of white male criminality. So when they were talking about the riots, when they were talking about that in regards to, you know, us looking at us, you know, for the space of criminality, it's in service to this. You see what I'm saying? So when I read it in its entirety, it was saying that white America was they get to basically be hands off. They get to be the unseen hand. You see what I'm saying? So we'll look at ourselves very ferociously, like many of us are looking at Dr. King's life and his legacy and all of these things. You see what I'm saying? Very ferociously, and not speak to him in that space, being bold enough and courageous enough to tell them the truth to their face, in their face, and at the end, they applauded. You understand what I'm saying? They applauded, standing applause. You understand what I'm saying? And he spoke vehemently against American policy from a militaristic perspective. There's more to the speech that's written and transcribed than what he actually spoke about. So there were some areas that he didn't touch based off of the room. So he said he told himself he wasn't going to speak about Vietnam, but then
Right.
that he actually wrote, he spoke about it. So
He
if
did.
a little bit of that part that he was talking about with Vietnam, because he has a whole entire speech dedicated why I'm opposed to the war in Vietnam, and he got intricate details. I think that's still available. So if y'all wanted to check that out, y'all definitely should. What he said about Vietnam, and one of the things he said towards the end when he was, quoting these other intellectual minds, he said the Bible is right. And when he said the Bible is right, he said the Bible is right because you reap what you sow.
Mm.
And you reap what you sow. This is what he said. You understand
Mm.
what I'm saying? So this is, I just wanted to get that right there. And he said about Vietnam. He called it an unwinnable war. Today we are spending almost $35 billion a year to fight what I consider an unjust, ill considered, evil, costly, unwinnable war at Vietnam. I wish I had the time to go into the dimensions of that. So if y'all go and listen to that other speech, why I'm opposed to the war in Vietnam, the American government response to his speech was Dr. King has outlived his usefulness.
Mm.
Put that in the paper. They
Mm.
put that out in the paper, So for many of the folks that's talking, you see what I'm saying? Because you're going to hear this. It's the pendulum's going to sway back and forth in regards to the thoughts and opinions on the life and the legacy and the impact of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Nobody went to the paper and put your damn name in the paper and said you have outlived your usefulness.
Mm.
Nobody went that far. You see what I'm saying? There was a psychic, quote unquote lady who told him not to go to Tennessee, like they told President John F. Kennedy not to go to Texas. You see what I'm saying? They said there was something that was opposed to that. Dr. I had sent you a small video on the breakdown. There's a full video where Bob Steve Coakley Sr., peace and blessings be upon him and his divine family, broke down every aspect of the assassination, like every aspect, not, from pseudo conspiracy space, but point by point. Like he broke it down, his assassination along with Malcolm X's assassination and some other people. You see what I'm saying? So he was definitely a man who brought the facts and.
You went out, brother Knowledge Born.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. But you said he was definitely a man who brought the facts.
Right, he brought the facts, and nowadays folks say receipts. I don't do that. You understand what I'm saying? He showed and proved what he was talking about with evidence, and not just hearsay. So that's something to consider for those who are interested. And he uncovered that the bullet to his head from James L. Ray didn't kill him. He was killed in the hospital. You see what I'm saying? And he brought the documentation to support that. So he was a factual, phenomenal researcher, a great mind who brought those things out point by point.
Ashe.
And
Ashe.
so
I
I'll just
know.
I'll just say that.
No, I say. And so, family, another thing that Dr. King, he was talking about the condition of Black America, and how the local and state and federal governments were responsible, for creating Black poverty and Black impoverished, communities, right? Black ghettos. And so they did that. The disparities in incomes between Black and white people, all of that stuff was facilitated by our government. Okay, and you can learn about the specific policies and laws, the specific policies, laws, and acts. Okay, that they created, or that they passed, that they created and passed and implemented. Right, that created the Black condition here in America. Check out this book, family, "The Color of Law" by Richard Rothstein. Check it out. The Read Book Club, we actually did we read it and we discussed each chapter. So I'm looking for it right now. I'm going to my
That was the
library.
last one, right? The last one you were just
Yep, the
reading?
last. Yep. I'm
Latest
going
one.
here. I'm going here now, looking for my playlist.
I'm a
Oh,
fan, Dr. Maat. I'll be keeping up. You
oh
understand?
no, yeah.
I'm a
You're
fan.
right. It was the last. It was the last one. Hold on. Let me share my screen with you all. Let me present and share this with you. So look at this. So where's the color of law? Right here. Right here. The color of law. And these are all of the discussions. Look at this, family. Is the law colorless? Strategies they use to segregate America, the origins of public housing in Black ghettos, the formation of white only communities in Black slums, why Black home ownership is low, keeping it white by any means necessary, origins of the white flight phenomenon. Look at this, family. Everyone conspired to keep Blacks out, including the church. And I'm not talking about the Black church, I'm talking about white folks' church. All right. Sabotage and justice delayed for Black Americans. State sanctioned violence against the Black community. How they suppress Black income. All right. Legacy of government racial policies. Separate or integrate family. I'm going to drop the link to this playlist in the chat. I'm telling you, family, grab the book and check out these discussions. I just dropped the link in the chat. Brother Knowledge Born, do you have any closing words, brother, for the listening audience?
I think first I wanted to thank you, for another opportunity to be here and address your audience. I love your audience. They are very intelligent. You have some thorough minds,
I love
that
them.
engage.
I love them. I love them to pieces. I'm telling you. But go ahead, keep on going
They
because I love
they're
them.
not messing. They're not messing with none of my foolery. I tried a couple of foolery statements, and they weren't having the foolery statements yesterday or today. So you understand. I love them for their astuteness. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So definitely decide for yourselves, family. Do your own research. There are links out there. There are plenty of information. Get the speeches. Get the books. There's a book that is called that Dr. Martin Luther King himself wrote about the letters from prison.
Letters from the Birmingham jail. Birmingham
Yeah,
jail.
yes,
I know
yes.
you're talking about.
Right. So extensively, he gets into many of his experiences and many of the experiences of the time. We can't gloss over that period of time because so much of the world was changed in this particular time. So much of the world was changed. There we go. See it? Look, that's it. So read it for yourself and don't allow these other things to come in and clog your mind. Like read the words yourself. You see what I'm saying? Do your own research, do your own study, draw your own analysis. Take a time to sit with your family and pick one of the speeches. Pick one of the speeches, get the family together and get their analysis. You see what I'm saying? Like wisdom comes from all kinds of sources. Look at your children, ask them about it. You see what I'm saying? They're discussing strategies for our downfall at the dinner table. You understand what I'm saying? We should be discussing our rise. We should be discussing our rise, our resurrection, our reformation, strategically and in the most proper manner. So thank you again, Dr. Maat. Peace and blessings to your audience. Peace and black power to you. And continue on in your sojourn in this amazing, amazing work and highlighting our ancestors and celebrating those among us that are living. You see what I'm saying? Those among us that are living and those that are putting in work and giving the great sacrifice. I wish that we could have had this series and we could have heard from Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark, at your behest. You understand what I'm saying? And so many others that we have to infer about. And for those living and putting those published works out, support those published works, support those communiversities, like Baba and Wally Mubarudi always called it communiversity. Like Dr. Bobby E. Wright called it communiversity. So bring back the communiversities and, let's get some of these, study sessions where we can look critically at a lot of these things and make the decision for ourselves.
Absolutely. And brother, the knowledge born Allah, appreciate you, brother, for coming through, always dropping the knowledge, so appreciate you. Folks, you can find him at Do the Knowledge Radio. He's always streaming on Facebook and YouTube. And so just type in Do the Knowledge Radio, connect with him on social media. He has a lot. I think he said, how many shows? Did you say 4,000, 5,000 shows?
3,000. Yeah,
3,000. I knew it was crazy. Look. First, I gave you 500 or 600. Today, I gave you 5,000 or 6,000 because I just knew it was somewhere. I knew I was wrong when I said 500 or 600. You was like, nah, it's 3,000. So today, I just said
you're a prophetess, okay?
I said,
look,
5,000 or 6,000.
Give me the motivation to keep on going because it's rough out here in these YouTube streets. You know, like I know.
No doubt. And they're censoring Black voices. So platforms like Do the Knowledge Radio, we need you, brother. So keep on pumping out, the knowledge, correct knowledge. Keep on pumping that out because they're filling the space, this cyberspace with a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation for our people. And so we gotta be the beacon of lights. You know what I mean? We gotta be it, at this point. We gotta be it. And so keep on doing what you're doing, brother. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with my listeners and I tonight. Family, make sure that you thumb up the video. Some of you slid in here, got all this Black power information, and you didn't thumb up the video. I didn't ask you for a Snapchat like some of these folks do. Give me a Snap, put some money on my Snapchat. I didn't do that. I didn't ask you to cash at me anything. I asked you to do 3 things. Let me tell you what I need you to do. 3 things. That's all I ask, family. And the stuff I'm asking you to do is free. I ain't going to call out some other folks. They want you to put the money in my tray, pass the plate around. They want to do that. No. I just say thumb up the video. I ask you to share the video. I also say, hey, if you aren't subscribed to my channel, subscribe and hit the notification bell so that whenever I go live, that you're notified. Also, if you are subscribed, please check to see if you're still subscribed because YouTube has now what they're doing is unsubscribing people from my channel. I've even noticed, brother Knowledge Born, that some of my views, I'll look and my views will go up, and then I'll look the next day and my views will go down like 100 people. I said, well, how did the views, if 100 more people viewed it, how are my views going down on YouTube instead of up? So they're playing a lot of games, family, with these social media platforms, with the algorithms and with the number. And so you'll look and say, oh, this video only did 1.4K, when really the video may have did 4 or 5K. But what they're doing is they're like I said, they're censoring these platforms, family. So they're not getting the reach out there. Then they're reducing. One time I woke up, brother Knowledge Born, on IG, and I literally had 400 people unfollow me. And when I called Voices of Our Ancestors, shout out to the young brother Chase over there and the young brother who runs Bicklin, they said, Doc, they was like, you lost 4. I woke up this morning and 2,000 people were gone. They're playing these games, family. So again, if you are subscribed to this channel, go back and ensure that you're still subscribed because they're running a game. They're playing games with us. But anyway, Knowledge Born, thank you so much for coming out. I'm going to play my outro, Truth to Power Talk with Dr. Maat, the theme song for my Truth to Power Talk with Dr. Maat by brother Armaday the Apostle. Because tonight, brother Knowledge Born, we talked a lot of Truth to Power Talk. It was a lot of Truth to Power Talk happening tonight. So I said my outro has to be Truth to Power by Armaday the apostle. So family, thank you so much for coming in. Let me know in the chat if you hear it. I think I did click share the audio, but sometimes I don't. But peace and love to you. I may or may not be live tomorrow. A part of me feels like I gotta go live for brother Muhammad Ali. So more than likely I will be live, for an hour tomorrow. So if you don't catch me tomorrow, family, have a blacktastic week. Oh, on Thursday, I'm bringing Baba Ashwal Kwesi through at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because we're going all the way in on was the Egyptians black. So family, make sure at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday that you are in the building. Peace and black power. Amanina Amandala. Uhuru Sasa. Peace and love.
It's more than my clothes. This truth, the power talk. Front line, about time, final hour thoughts. You can't fool me with the propaganda. The devil used to bruise me.